This incident will stir the strings of the hearts of the viewers as you keep listening to this incident. This is not an incident, but a true story that will tug at your heartstrings. So you are requested to watch this video till the end, because it is possible that we too may unknowingly be committing a mistake which may prove costly for us. I left my wife and 1-month-old daughter and went to London. Whenever I mentioned returning to Pakistan, my mother and brother would stop me by telling me the stories of their helplessness. 10 years passed like this. My wife was diagnosed with cancer and she kept requesting me to come back, but I was facing the constraints of my family, my wife. This is how my 10-year-old daughter died after being stabbed. She sent a message to me secretly from her uncle's phone saying, "Dad, come back, otherwise these people will kill me too." When I came to Pakistan without telling, I was surprised to see that it had only been 1.5 years since I got married there, that I had to come to London for work. I was the eldest in the house, and my father had always explained to me that the responsibilities of the younger ones in the house are now on me, because my father could not do any business due to illness. I am a resident of a village near Sialkot. I used to be in Sialkot. I used to work in a big company, and the salary was also good. But as soon as I got married, my mother started telling me again and again that now my salary could not cover the expenses of 2 houses. My wife was very patient and thankful, but sometimes she would come and make a request. My mother used to tell him a lot of things. Ever since a close relative of ours went to London, there has been a world of difference in the circumstances of his house. He started telling me again and again that, "Son, you also going to London." I did not want to leave my wife and go abroad, but due to the pressure of parents and family looking at the circumstances, I decided. My wife had got a nice special jewelry given by her parents. My mother started telling me again and again. I decided to sell my wife's jewelry to meet my foreign travel expenses, and as soon as my salary starts, I will return her jewelry to her. I told this to my wife, and she was surprised because the conditions at my house were like this. I assured her that I would reach London. He was the first one to make her jewelry and give it to her. She had 2 brothers, and she was the only sister. He gave me this jewelry because my brothers should not know in any way. After all, Amreen knew that when this news reached my parents, they would be very sad. When I gave the good news of the child, my mother's attitude was strange from the beginning. She used to take great care of Amreen towards me. But when Amreen told me this, when she scolded me during every conversation, I would often become silent after hearing this, and would sternly tell Amreen that I should not try to create a rift between us, mother and son. Despite the presence of sisters at home, it was Amreen's responsibility to eat. Often, if his temper deteriorated, the doctor would sternly tell him not to eat. Time. There is a need for rest and peace, and at the same time she would criticize me that in such a situation I should give fruits, etc. to my wife to eat, but I would like to go to London. I was so worried that I had collected my passport and other important documents in Sialkot itself whenever Amreen asked me to bring anything. So, my mother would get worried, and whenever I would go to ask her for some money, she would show me a long list of household expenses and also say, "You." When my father-in-law realized the situation, he started giving expenses to his daughter as per his status. Did it. Amreen now started getting angry with me. I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers whose entire responsibility was almost on Amreen's shoulders. Because mother said that the sisters are too young, and anyway they have to work at their in-laws' house. When Amreen asked me to get tired of doing some work, I would get angry and say, "Don't touch the work, I will do the work myself," and then Amreen would shy away from work. One day suddenly Amreen's condition worsened, so we took him to the hospital. God had blessed me with a daughter. My wife and I were very happy to see our daughter. But her mother also said that in our family, the son comes first. Both of us were wives. Amreen's father became silent after hearing this. Amreen's father was also present in the hospital. I soon came back home. I came home and drank sweets as per my mood. Banti and her daughter named Fatima. Fatima was very sweet. When Fatima became a mother, then my visa. As the days of departure were approaching, my heart was getting worried inside. I was not able to understand that I was so young. How could I leave my daughter and wife and go so far? Then I would look at my parents and my siblings and think, let's do something. No, I am the eldest. I should do this much for them. I thought that in 3 years, our circumstances would change. My mother also used to be sad all the time. Then, after leaving, my sisters, my mother and brothers all came to see me off at the airport. My wife also wanted to come with us, but my mother stopped her, saying that after seeing my son and seeing you, it would be difficult to leave, so she should stay at home with her daughter. I found this statement of my mother very bitter, but I hid it in my heart. I went into the room and hugged my wife, but I never thought that I would ever see her alive again. I loved Fatima, and then gave her into Amrin's arms. When I left the house, she was standing at the door with very sad eyes, and kept waving at me till we turned the corner and went on the road. No one knows. After turning the corner and getting on the road, I came to London with the prayers of my parents and siblings. Here, my cousin had already arranged a job for me. I used to get a salary of 50,000 rupees in Sialkot, but now I started getting lakhs of Pakistani rupees. However, I used to work day and night. Along with work, I also had to take my turn at cooking food and washing clothes, just like the other boys in the room. At that time, I was deeply homesick. I used to talk on the phone with pride. I could talk to everyone. But whenever I wanted to talk to Amrin, my mother would sit in the room. I was watching my daughter grow up on video call, and my mother used to recite to me a long list of needs. My brother's education also continued. My father also wore a white cartoon outfit and spread his wings with great enthusiasm throughout the village. My father also wore a white cartoon outfit and spread his wings with great enthusiasm throughout the village. I used to roam around saying that my son was earning money in a foreign country. Whenever I asked my mother whether she was saving from her salary or not, on hearing this she would start saying, "Son, don't you trust your mother? I spend every single penny of yours thoughtfully for your wife and daughter too. I fulfilled all the needs, and then she told me that she has started trying for the marriage of your sisters from now onwards till the wedding day. It will be useful." I tried a lot to get my mother to buy a separate mobile phone for Amrin, but my mother always said that women have habits. It's a little thing to upset men, and it will upset you. Don't think about it. We take great care of it. It was about to be my 3rd year in London, and my younger brother, who was a matriculation student at that time, refused to study, and also insisted that he was fond of land. I was surprised to hear this request from my mother, because I used to keep a little pocket money and give all the remaining money to my mother. Mum started scolding me on the phone that I should have kept some money aside and thought of preparing for the house. Household expenses and children. It is no longer in her power to meet her expenses, and she also used to say that your wife asks for separate expenses. She has started feeling proud that this house runs on the income of this city. Be a little hard on your wife and make her realize that this is not your favor but your duty several times. I used to fight with Amrin because of what my mother told me, and then I did not talk to him for many days. My daughter used to see me only on the phone. Sometimes this would happen. Amrin would be sleeping, and I would switch off the phone. My mother said she doesn't even do the housework anymore, but my sisters do all the work. I kept getting angry after listening to her saying these things. I couldn't believe that Amrin could change so much. If I'd called you, tell me. When she told me that Amrin had gone to her mother's house, I would get angry with her as to why she let her go without my permission. And when I talked about calling his brother, Mother would swear at me and say, "Son, don't bother these people there, otherwise your in-laws will be punished. What will they think that I have kept their daughter so tight?" Slowly, I was beginning to get bored of my wife. The hard work of the day and night had made me feel bored. I had also become irritated and ill-tempered. Now I started spending less and less money. I felt that my mother was saving and hoarding my money, and in a few years, I will have accumulated so much that I will leave London and go back to Pakistan and start some suitable business there. 4 years later, when I told my mother, she was surprised and said, "Son, right now it is only about the education of your brothers and the treatment of your father. I am barely able to make ends meet. Then you also have expenses for your wife and daughter, and now you try to find another job." I was very upset after hearing this. My friends and my father used to tell me that I should not trust my family so much, but right from the beginning, I never told anything in front of my mother and father. I did not open my tongue, and after that, it was like a line on a stone for me. Well, I found a better job than this. Here my salary was around 2 lakhs, my friends. After getting the salary, I eat in good clothes. He used to go for food, and I used to spend most of the time in my room. Amrin told his brother to take a separate mobile phone whenever he went to his room. Whenever I tried to go and talk, someone would come to him, and he would tell me in messages that I should go back to Pakistan. But now everything is home. It is also going well, and you should find a job here. When I used to say this to my mother under some pretext, she would get angry after hearing this. Then I would sit down crying. My sisters were also getting married now. They too had to get married. Looking at my brothers, I used to think, when will they finally get married? I would be busy with my work, but my mother would break my heart every time by saying that they were still small children and there were every kind of facilities in the house. I wanted a new place to be built, but my mother wanted the sisters to get married first. And in all these years, there has been no Pakistan even once. I wanted to build a new place, but my mother wanted her sisters to get married first. And in all these years, I have not gone to Pakistan even once. Time kept running very fast. My hair turned grey. And when I looked towards Amrin, she started looking old before her time, my daughter. She called me again and again in the parrot language and said that the father of all the children was with her, and you should also come back. Hearing this, my heart would stop and I would call. She called me again and again in the parrot language and said that the father of all the children was with her, and you should also come back. Hearing this, my heart would stop and I would call. I would close it and sit down to cry. It was not difficult to live alone in a foreign country. My friends would look at me with great regret because they often used to take leave and go to our home. But whenever I talked about going on leave, my mother would come up with some compulsion and sit down. My friends would look at me with great regret because they often used to take leave and go to our home. But whenever I talked about going on leave, my mother would come up with some compulsion and sit down. I had to spend the money I had collected for my ticket at home. My 2 sisters were engaged at a very nice place, and I spent a lot of money on their request. I was surprised that my sisters and my parents had never once told me that they would marry without me. My mother used to encourage me emotionally and said that only the lucky ones get a son like you. I was on video call only. I kept watching my sister's wedding ceremony, but I was surprised to see that my wife and daughter were wearing very simple clothes. I kept watching my sister's wedding ceremony, but I was surprised to see that my wife and daughter were wearing very simple clothes. When I told to my mother, she became silent, and then without knowing it, she said to Amrin that Amrin had stopped calling me, and I was very upset to see him. When I told my mother, she became silent, and then, without knowing it, she said to Amrin that Amrin had stopped calling me. I was very upset to see him. Many days would pass without me talking to my wife and daughter. Many days would pass without me talking to my wife and daughter. My friends tried to convince me many times that I went to Pakistan without telling my family. My friends tried to convince me many times that I went to Pakistan without telling my family. I wish I had listened to him at that time. Once my two brothers requested that they want to buy an iPhone. I was angry after hearing all this. I screamed at her and did not call home for several days. Whenever I received a call from home, I immediately switched off my phone. My mother got worried and told my cousin that they met me and explained to me that we don't show our father's heart and you call home. Aunt explained to both of them. I hugged my friend and cried. I was slowly realizing that I am only a golden egg for my family. I am a dying disease from which they withdraw money every month. I had no more status in their life than this. I am a dying disease from which they withdraw money every month. I had no more status in their life than this. Now I have to cry for London. Now I have stopped calling for hours every day. I used to talk for 5 or 6 minutes and ask my mother to show me my wife and daughter. Now I would often go out for a walk. Similarly, a time came when I met a girl. A similar series of meetings followed. It started, and she started expressing her love. I too was living alone, away from my wife, so I started thinking thoughtfully, and she also started expressing my love. I was living alone away from my wife, so after some thinking I became satisfied and I knew that I would love myself. I am doing wrong to my wife, but I had become more selfish and I married Shazia. She had a good amount of wealth left by my father. There was peace in my life, and I used to send a fixed number to home also. Gradually, my contact there became less and less. Then, one day, a storm came in my life when I received a message from Amrin's brother that Amrin was a cancer patient and was taking her last breaths in the hospital. I told Shazia that I wanted to go to Pakistan, but he did not allow me. He told me that he was ready to pay me a good amount of money so that I could go to Pakistan. I got my wife treated, but she couldn't sell me to Pakistan because she was afraid I wouldn't come back to London again. I was suffering from a strange eczema. And I called my mother and told her angrily that she could not take care of my wife in my absence, hence my mother should be angry with me. I went and switched off the phone. My father-in-law kept calling me Pakistan again and again, but I kept sending him the same amount, but also said that it was not possible to reach Pakistan because the company did not give me leave. When I saw Amrin on a video call, I used to feel immense pain. I left my beautiful young wife and came to London so that I could meet the expenses of my family. But what happened to my partner during this journey, doctor? It was said that she did not want to get well, and perhaps her cancer had spread throughout her body. Within 6 months, she quietly left this world. I couldn't even go to her funeral. Seeing this, my in-laws broke relations with me and left my daughter with her grandmother. He considered me responsible for his daughter's death, and to some extent he was right. My friendship with Amrin lasted only for 2 years, but I knew that she was God's captive. She wanted me unconditionally. It had been 9 years in London. Now it had become my compulsion to call her home. She called me my daughter. One day I was told that my daughter was in the score. I didn't even want to read, but her silent and pale face was telling me a different story. Now the brothers also started getting married for one more year. My two brothers were also married, and now both of them were earning. I was managing the business of Shazieh, and he was paying me a fixed salary. She used to give me money and also gave me some money for my daughter. For many days I was seeing strange dreams. I used to feel like Amrin. She is calling me. Sometimes she appears to me very sad, wandering in a deserted desert, and sometimes she is sitting on the bank of a waterfall. She would repeatedly tell me that I was in a lot of pain. I would wake up scared in the morning and start crying. Shazia would also get worried seeing my condition. This series of recurring dreams continued for several days, and my condition kept getting worse day by day. One day Shazia started saying to me that she thinks Amrin is trying to tell me something, isn't she? Your daughter Fatima is facing some problems. Do this without telling her, and go to Pakistan and see. What's the matter? I was surprised to hear this from Shazia because she had not allowed me to go to Pakistan even during Amrin's illness. But now later, when I had a child, she immediately permitted me. After 4 years of marriage, God had given Shazia the status of mother too. Perhaps that is why she did so. Nature had become so soft that perhaps she did not want to lose me. I immediately left for Pakistan. 10 years later I reached the village, so there was change everywhere. I was looking at the village with surprise. When I reached home, my neighbor told me that my family members had sold this house and shifted to Rawalpindi. I was surprised. They didn't even like to tell me. I was asking for the address when they came to my parents' new house. When I reached home, I was surprised to see that a very expensive and wonderful house was built, and 2 beautiful vehicles were also parked outside the house. The past 10 years had made me old. When I left Pakistan, I was a happy young man of 28 years, but now I have become a tired and defeated man. When I rang the bell again and again, someone came running to the door. She was a weak girl with a scar on one side of her face. For some time she kept looking at me with surprise, and then suddenly she recognized me and hugged me. Seeing her, I also thought that this was my daughter. I got excited. The weak little girl whose face was badly burnt by something. It was no one else but my daughter Fatima, who had been suffering in a foreign country for the last 10 years. My daughter, this child, was in the house of my relatives. Present in the hall were both of us, father and daughter, hugging each other and crying. After a while, a woman wearing shiny clothes came running, screaming. She came and grabbed Fatima's arm, tried to jerk me away from her, and very rudely started asking me who I was and who she was after hugging her. "You are mourning." I heard this, and then I went inside the house calling my mother, my father and my brothers. That woman told me. She came inside the house, stopping me. At that time, dinner was being eaten. Everyone was sitting at the dining table. Everyone surprised me. While watching, he got worried after seeing Fatima's hand in my hand. The first thought came to my mother and she hugged me, crying in a spectator manner. Then my mother and brother also hugged me one by one. I stood and watched them all attentively. My mother hugged me in a feeling manner. She tried to touch her hand with my hand, but I pushed her hand away with force. Fatima was frightened and was standing on one side when the woman was rude. She came out of the house while doing my homework. She was my brother's wife. My daughter's condition forced me to look at my mother with difficulty. When she asked, "Oh Allah, who put my daughter in this condition? Who burnt her face?" Then mother slapped her chest twice and said, "Son, what did I do to you? Looks like an executioner. She is a girl and is mischievous." The employee was cooking, so she went to the kitchen. She had a parrot in her hand. Maybe she took it off and put it down, and all of a sudden she reached there and her face burned. I was worried about anything he said. Maybe he took it off and put it down, and all of a sudden she reached there, and his face changed. I did not believe anything he said because a few days ago, Fatima had received a message from her uncle's phone that, "Papa, you are back. Come on, they will kill me like my mother." That's why I turned to Fatima and asked, "Fatima, son, tell me who has burnt you now." "I am back." Fatima pointed towards her aunt fearfully. Then the anger that had been suppressed for years inside me came out and I started screaming badly. I started running and asked my mother and father whether I was not your true child or not. I have lived in a foreign country away from the country for years. Faced the hardships and my wife will die after getting cured. Whenever I wanted to come back, I was stopped. Even now I don't know anything. If Fatima doesn't secretly send messages on my number from her uncle's phone, I am very thankful that my second wife passed on that message to me. Had I been tough like my mother, my daughter Fatima too would have become the target of your cruelty and would have gone away from this world after hearing this in my house. They stood surprised. Then suddenly my brother came forward and said, "Brother, you have said as much as you wanted to say if you have returned home after so many years. If you want to live in the house with respect, then stay, otherwise take this daughter of yours and leave from here." I was surprised to hear this from her, and as if I was about to say something, mother and father also looked at this very indifferently and said, "Okay, if we mother and son are so cruel, then now we are not responsible for your daughter. You take your daughter with you when you have married someone else. Your daughter can only be raised by your second wife." We said something. Didn't think that now fulfill your responsibility, only I knew how I stood on my feet from the city. I returned home after years and a long distance. After doing this, the house had also changed and so had the family members. Then I silently held my daughter's hand and walked out of the door, thinking what, I too could be like this. I was going crazy. I had so much trust and confidence in my parents and siblings. I caught a taxi and went straight. I went to my friend's house and stayed there for a few days. Then Shazia sent my daughter's passport and visa. I reached London with my daughter. Gaia Shazia accepted Fatima with all her heart, but even after giving up everything, I was not left empty-handed. I also had a kind-hearted wife with me who helped me in difficult times. Otherwise, my relatives have made me stand on the road. Similarly, some time passed and then my cousin called me, told that your mother had died in a car accident. When they started lowering your mother into the grave, flames started coming out of the grave, and even today, Sam and the children are sitting on your mother's grave. Your mother and brothers took the life of your wife for the sake of wealth and ruined the life of this innocent child. Your brothers suffered huge losses in their business, and today they are forced to beg. He has got so much debt that he gave away his house, car, and everything. I was holding my daughter in my lap and thinking about the wealth that he had taken over, and for the sake of the wealth for which they took the life of my wife and tortured my daughter and threw me out of their house, that wealth was of no use to them, and all their something got stuck and those things got ruined and were forced to suffer the pain. And today, I am living a life full of happiness with my children and wife. I am living with someone. If anything is missing in my life, it is that of Amrit. That is why I request that no brother should leave his country and go to a foreign country. They become your enemies. Take care of yourself and your wife and children, and eat half the bread. But do not leave your wife and children without support and go abroad. I pray to Allah Almighty that Allah Almighty keep us all dependent on Him throughout our lives and do not need others. Allah Almighty grant us all His protection and security. I keep Amen in the name of God. Viewers, if you liked today's video, please tell us in the comment box below by liking the video. Please share it with your friends too. That's all there was in today's video. To get more videos, subscribe to our channel. Thank you.